I ghosted my own launch. And then on Friday, I had a coaching conversation that entirely changed the way that I think about my business and also about my program. Want to hear all about it? Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. I am Melissa Hartman, and welcome to episode 6 of the CEO in You podcast, where we talk about how you can negotiate at work so that you can make more money and have more flexibility doing what you love. Today, we're diving into this big, juicy topic of how I ghosted my own launch, which I still kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable saying, but you know what? We're just going to work with that. And then I'll talk to you about how I had a coaching conversation just this last Friday that really changed how I think about everything about my business and what my secret sauce is. So let's jump into it. So let's start at the beginning with this one because it's really juicy and this is not something that entrepreneurs usually talk about very much because I ghosted my own launch only a few short weeks ago. And even talking about it now makes me a bit uncomfortable because that's not what you're supposed to do, right? You're not supposed to just basically ghost your own launch. And what I had done is I'd set up all of the webinars, I'd set up the entire program to be run. I knew the content, the core content that I was going to work through with my clients. I'd run a whole bunch of ads to find people who were interested in this topic. And then with no one showed up. I was like, oh, okay. So I ran the webinar anyway because it's really helpful to have that recording of what I was going to say. But the reality is that if I had been listening to my own intuition, I knew I wasn't quite ready. And I don't say this in like a procrastination point of view. Something wasn't feeling quite right about this launch to me. And there were some things that I hadn't done that I would usually do, like sharing it a whole lot more with my list, sharing it with my followers on social media, things like that. So I hadn't done some of that. And I thought that was what was causing me to feel uncomfortable about this launch. But what I realized on reflection was that this launch wasn't quite ready for this new program. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I couldn't quite put my finger on why. Like, this is content that I'm really comfortable talking about. This is information about negotiating, and I'll share with you about the program, and then you'll see how it's evolved only in the last 4 days since I had this conversation. And so this realization was it's not quite ready yet. And so, like I said, I ghosted my own launch, stopped it, held back on all the conversations that were going to go out about it and all of the emails and things like that. And then just put a pause on it. And I knew that I was about to head over to this coaching program that I'm a part of. And I thought, you know what, maybe this coaching program, maybe this time away will give me some space and some capacity and a chance to ponder some things to be able to work out what was not quite right about this launch and why I wasn't quite ready yet. Because in that program, I'm working with a whole bunch of exceptional coaches and also exceptional entrepreneurs. I learned so much from my coach, James Wedmore. I also learned so much from the team of coaches that as a part of his program, the Next Level program that I'm in. But the entrepreneurs that are in this program as well, I learned just as much from them because they are extraordinary entrepreneurs. So I was hoping that heading over to Phoenix in Arizona, that being in that mindset and in that space would help me kind of work out what was off and what I could do about it. Now, as an aside, something that's really interesting to me is, so I've been working on this part of my business for 9 months now. and working with helping professionals to learn how to negotiate so that they can make more money at work and have more flexibility in doing what they love at work. And maybe half a dozen to a dozen times, I've had people ask me, once I've explained to them what I'm doing, or when they hear about what I'm doing, they say, "Oh, do you coach women?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't. I don't coach women. I coach everyone because the negotiation principles are the same. It doesn't matter what gender you are, the principles behind negotiating are the same. So for that reason, I coach everybody." But it was interesting to me that I'd been asked this so many times. And so I sort of took that as a little seed into these conversations over the weekend. So I got over the coaching program and had been having interesting conversations throughout with different people about my business and what I was doing. Spoke to some really thoughtful, considered people about the work I was doing. And in one of those conversations, someone asked me the question again, "Do you teach women?" And I said, "Well, I've been thinking about that because people keep asking me the question." And I said, "Look, the skills are the same." I said, "The thing that is different though is the expectations people have of women when they negotiate can be quite different." And so in that moment, I went, "Oh, hang on, there's something in there that I need to consider a bit more broadly, because if the skills are the same, but the environment is different, then perhaps there is something in needing to have a separate program." Okay. So that was the first of many light bulbs in Phoenix over the weekend. Then I went into this conversation with the coaches, and I particularly sought out this coach, Adam. And the conversation we were having was all about messaging. And he was leading a really interesting conversation to me about how do you talk about the work that you do so that people can easily understand what it is that you do. And then how do you share that in many different ways so that people can be really clear on what you do and whether it's right for them or not. And I loved his approach. I loved his really structured, simple, easy to understand, replicable approach to messaging. And so I went up to him afterwards and I said, "Hey, really appreciated the conversation. Here's how I'm thinking about my program. Can we just riff on it for a minute? Can we just have a few minutes and just riff on this conversation? And I want to hear what you have to say." And so I shared with him the name of the program. I said, "The program that I said I goes to my own launch. And here's the program that I was going to launch. Okay, it's called Powerful Negotiating. And the 3 different pillars of it are own your power, deploy your power, and then exponential power." And he had said some really interesting things to me after that. So I've got my notes here, and I'll just share with you some of the things that he said to me because it was fascinating to have this discussion with Adam. And so what he said to me was, "Are you really good at reading situations?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Do you teach your clients that? Because that's really important when it comes to negotiating." And I said, "Yeah, I do, but there's more that we could have conversations about that. We could expand on that. There's a lot more to talk about." And he said, "Because, timing is everything." And yeah, you're right, it is. There's certainly more that we can do in that space, and that's a really helpful insight. Then we started getting into the juice of it. And this is where the conversation that we had just entirely changed the way I think about the work that I do. He said to me, "Power feels hard." He said, "You've used that word power 3 times in your pillars." And he said, "It feels hard and it doesn't give you anywhere else to go." And I just went, "Okay, yep." Clearly, I was trying to make a point with power. Like, I want to encourage people to step into their power and to not feel like they're getting walked all over and be really intentionally powerful. And the interesting thing that he said to me was, he's like, yep, I get all that. And it feels hard and it can feel hyper masculine. And I was like, yeah, it can feel like, really hard when you're having these conversations. And he said, look, I feel like, let me just spitball with you here. He said, I feel like there's something missing in that. He said, I want to say words like beauty, and I want to say things like delicate. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, my first thought was, seriously, like, what are you, like, where are you going with this? Like, what are you saying to me? And we kept talking. And what I realized was this. I realized that he is exactly right. Nothing about the way that I teach negotiating is hard like that. And nothing about the way that I lead as an executive is hard like that. I have operated before from that hypermasculine place where it's like grind and hard and rah, 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 and have spent the last 10 odd years unraveling that and settling much more into a state of flow and ease in the way that I operate in the workplace, in a corporate, whether it's in my own business or in a corporate, or in the other businesses that I'm on the board of. Ease and flow is everything about how I operate. Even to the point where when I was operating in corporate, I would be sitting there and having, my tea in a China teacup. It's very much about who I am and how I operate. And all of my clients would say the same thing. I'm never going to be the person that's sitting there banging their fist on the table. And what I realized was that in some ways I had been teaching negotiating how I thought it needed to be taught, and was struggling with some of these components around the edges that felt like they were important to my clients, but they're not strictly negotiating. And so the kinds of things that I'm talking about here are the way we think about building up our options for ourselves, the way we talk about boundaries in my program. And that's not, in a strictly negotiating sense, would you really talk about boundaries? There's an argument there. But in my world, boundaries are critical because they're what, first of all, create the capacity for you to have the energy, time to think about negotiating. But they're also the thing that once you have negotiated, allow you to set boundaries around making sure that what you negotiated is what actually happens, rather than just what you negotiated and then, there's this creep of people taking more and more from you. And so things like that are topics that, would you strictly teach boundaries in a negotiating program? Maybe, but to me, it's critical. And there's a whole lot of conversations similar to this. We talk about timing. We talk about how do you have do all the research that you need to go do to operate in this space. We talk about values. Now, that's something that's never been spoken about in the negotiating programs and learning that I have been a part of. What are your values? How do you understand them? How do you incorporate them? How do you have them as your North Star? But for my clients, it's critical. And so these conversations where Adam was talking to me about beauty, about delicate, and I realized, oh, hang on, what he is pointing me in the direction of is my secret sauce. As a leader, as an entrepreneur in my programs, this is the reason why people come to me. It's because I don't teach you negotiating in the way that they will teach you negotiating at Harvard or Kellogg, where I learned to negotiate. I teach you negotiating and how to negotiate in a way that can feel really authentic to you as a leader, can feel softer, can feel easeful, and can give you this beautiful sense of flow and not this harshness that we encounter so often in everyday life, and certainly in a lot of the corporates that we are a part of, or that we interact with it in some way. And so Adam asking me these questions and all of these other people asking me these questions about, do you teach women? I realized that the secret sauce that I've got is in the way that I teach it, and the breadth of what I teach to help people thrive in that environment, and all the different components that come along with it. So how can you thrive at work in a way that feels authentic to you, that doesn't feel hard, that doesn't feel harsh, that feels easeful, joyful, and with a beautiful sense of flow. And so what I took away from all of those conversations, I'm really glad that Adam didn't berate me. He just kind of about not launching the program yet. He wasn't like, but you must launch so that you can get the data and you can just see how it goes. He didn't even kind of get stuck in it. He was just like, okay, that happened. And I'm really grateful for that, because I don't need anyone else to beat me up about it. I'm not beating myself up about it. I knew I wasn't ready. And so that was the first thing I was like, okay, that's really cool that someone was kind of able to be in that space with me and to let that go. And so that's the first key takeaway for me. I was really grateful for that. I wasn't ready to launch it yet. I didn't know this yet. That's why I didn't launch it yet. I didn't know that where the secret sauce was, and I do now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of those insights away, and I'm going to rework this program and make sure that that secret sauce is front and center, because that's the reason why people want to work with me. That's the reason that they join my programs, they join my one-on-one coaching, is that they want that for themselves. They want that ease, they want that joyfulness, and they also want the stuff that they want, right? They don't want to feel unapologetic. I got that really wrong. They don't have to apologize for what it is that they want. Finally got there. And they want to be able to go out and get it for themselves, for their families, for their teams. And that's the impact that negotiating can have, is that we can negotiate what it is that we want, what it is that we need for those people around us that are important to us, so that all of those aspects of our life can be successful in the ways that we define success. So I'm going to get stuck in on reworking this program. Now, my goal is to launch it in June. Now, some of you may know that I have a big birthday coming up in June. And so I think this would be an awesome birthday present to myself. Some of this stuff is my life's work. I've been learning these lessons for a really long time. I've been in corporate for 22 years now. And so sharing this as a birthday gift to myself, I just think would be an extraordinary celebration of the work that I've done so far and everything that I've learned. So that is my goal. Look out for it, June 21st. It's also the longest night of the year, so there will be a celebration all round for that. Now, in the meantime, if you want to work with me, I have opened up some one-on-one coaching spots, and I've been loving these conversations with my clients, talking about there's usually something big that they're working through at work, and they want some help navigating that situation. So I've got two different offers. One is just a single coaching call, and the other is a package of 3. I'm exploring adding a package that's longer. That'll be maybe a 3-month package. So if you're interested in that as well, then I'll drop my contact details in the show notes, then you can reach out to me about that. But at the moment, I've got one that's a career check-in, and that's just like an annual, how you do an annual check-in at your doctor and you go and talk to them about, hey, this is what's going on. Is everything okay? So we can just have a single one-off call and just check in about that, about your career, see if you're on track, and see if we may sort of realign you a bit in a different direction if it's not feeling quite right. So that's one option, and that's a single call. Or I have got an option where you can have 3 calls with me, and this is really about a reboot. If you're going through a big change at work, this one's the one for you, because it'll help you navigate it in a way that feels really powerful and intentional, and it doesn't feel like it's all happening to you. So you can be really stepping forward into that environment with confidence and feeling the power that lies within you as you navigate that situation at work. So that's the other option for you. I'll drop both the links for those in the show notes below. But in the meantime, I'm off to get to work. Got a June deadline. It's not even 2 months. So I will go and make that happen. And I will look forward to seeing you, though, here again very soon. Take care.